Cristina, you didn't have the chance to present, so maybe I'll kind of ask you the first question, generally around wallets, maybe super apps, and how you see, whether it's going to be a banking-led, or maybe it's going to be a fintech, non-bank kind of push in the next years.
Get the bad banks first. So I think it's a good question, and I think there are a lot of opinions out there. Super apps. So I love super apps. I think, and I'm not Gen Z, but I think Gen Zs are the perfect fit for super apps, and I think that's why we're going to see more in terms of super apps. And we can talk about, West adoption or West penetration of super apps versus East. But I think the ecosystem that they sort of create from a Gen Z perspective, and I keep mentioning Gen Z because they're like 32% of the global population, right? And their purchasing power is increasing, and they are very opinionated in terms of the convenience and having the access, in one place to a multitude of products, services, embedded finance as well. And there are a lot of incumbents that are managing parts of these flows that now, because of this consolidation and because we're going back to a trend of sort of rebundling, they're feeling a bit threatened, and banks as well. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, it's not a potential threat. But I'm going to sit here and I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to say that I don't think it's a winner takes it all kind of a scenario. I think there's enough pie for everyone if you have the right strategy and you know where you want to fit into this ecosystem that's kind of being created. And I can give the example of, again, from a bank's perspective, they can be the backbone of some of these super apps. And banks like Citi are actually powering a lot of these PSPs and even working with certain parts of these ecosystems and super apps. So I think there's room for everyone that can be efficient and can find their right sort of fit. And I think also from a wallet perspective and this kind of super app, I'll maybe take a different view. Again, coming from a bank angle, and I'll kind of zoom out of this ecosystem where we have the consumer in the center, and I'll give the perspective as well that outside of this, there are a lot of these traditional corporates and even digital natives that are banked, they work with banks, and they need to get money into that consumer, and then the consumer can spend it within the app. So we work with those corporates as well, and we help them get the money perhaps into a wallet, get the money into maybe the super app wallet, or so we have things like payments, enabling payments for maybe the gig economy into an Alipay wallet, or things like that. So those are also use cases where it's again about partnership, working with some of the super apps, working with fintechs, and of course I have to mention it, BaaS, banking as a service, which is another angle, I guess, from a bank perspective.
So it isn't the case that the bank has to own absolutely everything, but you're quite happy to also enable parts of this whole payments process.
I think so, and I think I'm going to say something, maybe controversial for banks, but banks don't really have the right sort of front end usually. We're not that great at that part. Maybe neobanks. So maybe neobanks can play more from a front end perspective, but I think we have the right sort of, the entire financial infrastructure, the whole know-how, even the data, which sometimes we have a lot of data, maybe don't know how to use it, but I think we're getting much better at that. So I think it's that part of things, which doesn't necessarily have to be the front end. And I know there's an opinion of you don't own the consumer, you don't own the money, but I don't fully agree with that sort of thought.
Yesterday in the panel I had, all the PSPs were saying the Gen Z statistics, but half of them don't have a bank account. So I suppose the good news is that half of them do. So that's the half of the banks. Do you think that these Gen Zs want everything in one app? So when they're non-banking, they still want the convenience of having absolutely every function and service that they want to use in one place?
I think definitely convenience is important. I think convenience was important even for millennials. So add the two groups together, the two generational tribes, and you have like 50% of the population wanting this kind of a convenience and a simple experience. So, yeah.
maybe to you again on the Gen Z and the functionality question. How many functions do you need around Google Pay that you want to provide yourself or with partners that are targeted to Gen Z or non-Gen Z in the next years?
Yeah, so I would like just to step back here a bit and just reiterating that at Google Pay we really believe in partnership, and we think that the best user experience could be done if you're partnering with the banks, with the schemes, with the merchants, and drive the coherent story together. On the super app, I think that in Europe and the US we already passed this moment, to be honest with you. And I think there are a few reasons of that. We will never have the same experience that we're seeing in China. I don't think we'll have an Alipay or WeChat-like, because in those countries, it's like using those apps are the same thing as having the access to internet. It's like, the whole thing, because you can do everything you want here. And there were a few fundamental reasons of why actually it worked there. So one of that is either those countries just passed the desktop moment, so just they were mobile first back to 2010. The second thing is that there were a lot of population which were underbanked, and banks couldn't help solve this problem at that countries. And the third thing is that government was helping those companies, the tech companies, to build the ecosystem around that. So these three factors played favorably to super apps in the Asia Pacific region. And now we see some involvements that some companies are trying to provide the complementary service. Like if you're having a taxi service, then you ultimately can add some food delivery or courier delivery. But probably we won't see the same thing that in Asia. So for Google Pay, we're working differently in different markets. So we have, the app that you all know, which is rolled out in Europe, in most of the Asian countries. We have a little bit standalone experience in India because it's a different market, and we are presenting there in a different way. And for example, in Europe right now, we do support tap and pay in store transactions. We do support online API, and we thought that it will be naturally fit if we can tell coherent story to the user about their digital wallet presence capability. And that's why our vision is to transform all your or to make Google Wallet the place where you can basically leave all your payment cards, and will be the one-stop for your non-payment cases. Like imagine you're traveling to Berlin from Copenhagen or London, and you're going to the hotel, and instead of using the plastic card, you're just using your phone to open your room. Or imagine you're driving your BMW car, and instead of opening with a car key, you just use your phone to open it up. And we see like cases like those one that have been demanding from the community. And here we can only do that if we're working together, with all the partners that are eager to integrate with us, the partners that would like to have a seamless standalone experience for their users.
I like that idea of all those functions you had. I use Google Pay, so I'd be quite happy to use Google for hotel check-in. Tickets, download any type of ticket, open a car. Yeah. As well, then we come back to the security aspect.
Absolutely.
Which maybe there was a question here. I think you mentioned virtual cards, and there was a question, what's the roadmap? So I think you're already doing virtual cards, and there was also the question on co-branding.
Co-branding, yeah. So just to answer your question, security is our top priority. We are putting that as a P0 things every time, because we do understand that today user trust and partner trust are of the most important thing. And so starting with the co-badging, yes, there is a lot of countries that have a code-based infrastructure. The good thing is that we're working on that, and probably within the next 12, 18 months, there will be some good developments here. So that's definitely on our radar and our roadmap. For the virtual cards, so as per now, the thing has just rolled out a couple of weeks ago, and we are just rolling out in the US. It takes quite a lot of resources from our side and from network sites to make it happen, but we see good traction. And I mean, we see that a lot of users are relying on autofill, as the convenient way to check out. So we carefully relate to the security and to the convenience, making sure that all parties are happy here. We don't have a specific timeline on whether it will be available in other regions, but we see the project has attraction, and hopefully it will be here someday.
Okay, Magdalena, there were a few questions for you, so maybe we can ask generally, what are your thoughts about additional functionality and making BLIK more into a super app? There was the issue of expanding overseas, and I don't know whether you want to say anything about fees or whether you want to say acquirers set the fee and avoid that question. And then there's also Germany or other markets.
Yeah, so let's start maybe with functionalities, yes, around, we believe that banks have the full power to be the super apps for payments, yes. I personally, maybe it's not a popular view, but I do not believe in super apps for everything. If you're trying to put everything in one application, then you have to prioritize, and if you have the audiobooks and food delivery, then if you decide what should you develop, you have to choose. It's you go either for this, you go either for this. If you have the taxi, then you're concentrated on the taxi and you deliver the best possible way there. Same for audiobooks. And in what we see in Poland, that banks are the super apps already. They are super apps for payments, and they address also the Gen Z needs, because this is the generation which is heavy user of BLIK, and they go to mobile banking application to pay for their e-commerce, to pay for their in-stores, and they go there to settle with friends, and they are really, really, really heavy users. So that's and of course, I believe that if you're planning to build a good payment method which will be successful, you need to try to serve as many payment use cases as possible. So not only the e-commerce one, like in BLIK case, which is the top one, but also to add other use cases and to offer the payment method to customer everywhere where he needs payment. For example, right now we are also planning to launch the BNPL, and how it works exactly the same way as the standard payment with BLIK. So you will go to your e-shop, choose BLIK Pay Later button. You will generate the 6-digit code in your mobile banking application. Then your mobile banking application will show you push and will request you to confirm all the information about the BNPL product and accept the rules. About going to Germany, this is very...
And France as well. See, everyone wants you.
Yeah, so this is, thank you for this question, it's very interesting. We have plans to go international and to be in other countries, but it's not that easy. PSD2 make the life easier for the payment institutions. There is a framework to exchange information between regulation authorities and a possibility to passport payment institution in another country, and that works good for developing the cross-border e-commerce. We have acceptance network, we have the global acquirers who are participants of BLIK system, and if we want to go to another country, we can say that we will have acceptance networks from day one thanks to this. But on the flip side, it looks totally different for a payment system. If you, as a payment system, you want to enter the other country, the regulations are very fragmented. You have to understand these local regulations, talk to the local authority, and like start the process of getting license for another country, like from the scratch. So we would love to see more universal regulations around the payment systems, and that's something what should be addressed. And of course, if we're talking about going international, it's also important to understand the local market, yes, to understand the players, to see what are the pain points on the market. Is it cash usage, or maybe there are other problems to be solved, and to think about what kind of benefits we can bring to all the players. And for sure we will address it market by market and decide where there is a space for building such cooperation around the payment method, because we believe that this kind of cooperation with all the players is the way to go.
So in terms of acceptance, you can be everywhere, honestly, through the partners that you have.
Yes, yes.
And on kind of being a payment scheme, it's kind of back to the Belgium. If the banks really want this, then it makes it easier. It's tougher to kind of try and build a new scheme unless there's that push for making it ubiquitous. And it's interesting that in the Polish banking apps, I mean, they've already done a good job of working with partnerships and APIs. So my BNP app has parking, tickets, other than the P2P. So they've already bundled many of the functions that people generally want to use day to day already in the banking app.
Yeah, or offers from e-commerce partners in one of the banks. So it's like almost like a super app, right?
So even though in Poland there are some companies that want to become the super app and compete with everyone, it seems the banks have at least got that foothold as the first potential to be kind of all in, assuming Gen Zs won't go to the banks.
I was going to say, and I should be obviously very positive, and I am, about the banking side of things, but this whole super apps thing in the sort of European space, and to kind of build on what you were saying, Dima, I think it's too advanced, the banking space, to get a super app easily. And I think sometimes we're playing a bit too loose with the term of super app, you know? But if you were to compare it to what you have in the East, in the true sort of sense, I think it'll be difficult to have that here in the near future. There's also fragmentation. There's also regulation, payment, banking, sort of money services regulation. There is GDPR. How is the information going to flow, you know, easily within the ecosystem? So it's not that simple. And also, I think in the East, it was also like a financial inclusion tool, which here, you know, again, we're more advanced from that perspective. So I don't know, in terms of this super app sort of concept, true concept from a West perspective. I think we'll probably get close to a super app, but not in the same sense of the sort of East, what we see there.
I mean, as this is about wallets, there was a question on friction. I mean, I'll ask all of you, what are your thoughts on how do we make the e-commerce process even simpler than it is? And can anything be simpler than putting in a 6-digit code? I mean, and then whether we can migrate anything really to the physical space. So maybe the question is, you know, can it be simpler in e-commerce and be virtually frictionless?
How can it be even more seamless than if you just tap in one click and verify with your biometrics? So basically, I think that's one of the ultimate scenario where security and convenience, you know, works together. And the things that I was sharing today is the way where we're trying to push all other non-tokenized cards basically for tokenization. And so there is a question also for the virtual card. Can it be theft? So theoretically, it might be can. However, because it is virtual card and is encrypted, the fraudster would never have the security keys, so they can't use that anywhere. So in this case, the vulnerability is close to zero.
And in terms of physical acceptance, because it's NFC for yourselves, then that isn't an issue. Do you see any other movements of wallets that are non-NFC really making any impact? Open banking, QR code, let's say in Europe.
Well, so I think that there are a few ways, the tap and pay experience could be done, right? There could be tap and pay that is currently powered for Google Pay, Apple Pay, and using your phone as your wallet. There could be some other experience, as you said, with the QR code and etc. I think it's up to user habit and user convenience of what the specific, cultural thing of that generation. The numbers that we see prove that tap and pay experience with your phone is predominant globally. There could be some countries, where people are more get used to QR codes, let's say in China. But because they were forming these habits right in the very beginning. And that's a pretty interesting thing. So, back to my home country, Russia, Google Pay and Apple Pay was launched there 2017, and it became the thing. After a couple of years, those countries became one of the biggest one in terms of the tokenization adoption. And the thing is what happened, because basically the tokenization concept was introduced almost the same time as the contactless concept of cards. So when a user was thinking, okay, how would I pay? With the cash, with a contactless card, or with the phone? They thought the phone is more convenient, and they use it. So in other countries, the tokenization concept, it just appeared a little bit later. So user get their habits, using just plastic cards or whatever other methods. So I think it's a matter of the user behavior. But once they switch the behavior and they find the right channel for them, then that's a super cool thing.
Okay, Cristina, in terms of the most frictionless e-commerce type of payment that you see as you're responsible for e-com?
I would sort of give a different example in terms of what I think we're gonna probably see more. I think it's that, and it's also from my experience as well. It's kind of that cohesive shopping experience in terms of whether you start off in store or you start off on the app. You start off in store and then move to the app, or you start off in the app and move into the store. And it is, as much as it's a buzzword, but it's that omni-channel sort of experience where the classic example of, you've looked at stuff online and then you go and you buy it in the shop, or maybe you buy it online, but you returned it in the shop. And it has to be still recognized. And some of the retailers, I think what they're going to do is they're going to leverage their sort of apps and a wallet and kind of have that experience there in that wallet. You'll have the reward points. You'll be able to spend from there. You'll get your reimbursement for your refunds within there, and then you can spend again. So I think that's at least that's what I'm thinking we're going to see more in the future. That's not to say that you won't need the in-store sort of acceptance of wallet payments, and I think those are very important. But I think we're going to see more of this other sort of space as well.
And I suppose for any of the methods we've discussed today, you can make the kind of experience in-store be similar to e-com by just having a web browsing type of purchase. Ella, what do you think? I mean, BLIK, obviously you think that's the best and the simplest method. And in terms of physical acceptance, you've moved to tap. So do you think there's anything else you can improve in either of those two areas?
There's always room for improvement. But speaking about more seamless experience than putting the 6-digit code. Now speaking about e-commerce, we've got such a solution. For the sake of saving time here, we didn't show it, but once you can save, when you are doing shopping online, you can save the shop as trusted in your banking application, so that next time you don't have to generate this 6-digit code. You just confirm the transaction with the PIN, so it's even faster. And I also saw the question from the audience, why 6-digit code and not biometry? Well, 6-digit code is just for initiating the payment, and biometry is confirming the payment, so you can choose biometry or PIN.
And if I may add to this, we have a super interesting project with Biedronka, the biggest retailer in Poland, where, because what you do additionally in the shop, you scan your loyalty card, yes? So in Biedronka right now, you can connect BLIK to your loyalty card and say, when I scan my loyalty card, I will be paying with BLIK. And you scan, and then you just confirm the transaction in your mobile banking app. So that's another kind of the frictionless in-store experience.
And with all the talk, maybe the last kind of sections, we have a few minutes left, all the talk of digital ID, do we think that, let's say for Europe, that the digital ID could be embedded in, let's say for Poland, in the mobile banking apps? Or is it more likely to be in a government app, separate for each country?
I can see that for Poland, I can imagine the very easy process, like same as BLIK, yes, using same functionalities. So if I want to share my digital ID on a web page, on an application, I will just put my 6-digit code from my banking app, and in banking app, I will just confirm that, yes, I want to share my digital ID, which is this, this, and this, and I confirm it with my PIN or with my biometrics. So I can see that it's another easily adopted use case for BLIK flow. But I'm quite sure that also the government applications, identity applications, will search for a solution to be delivered.
I was going to say, building on that idea of the government side of things, I think when you start off for a new thing, when you start off with a very valid use case, then it's going to build on from there, and people get more, because it's about trust, a lot about trust. And about your data, although we're very happy to kind of share it with Facebook and, with some of the other sort of apps, but otherwise we're kind of apprehensive. So I think if there's a use case with the government, it can build from there. And I was thinking back to when sort of contactless was launched, and Barclaycard was kind of at the forefront of that, both issue and acquire, and it didn't really take up. And what happened in London, at least, they started doing TfL, Transport for London, they started doing the Oyster. So people actually started getting used to tapping, and then they started getting used to tapping to pay. Well, now obviously you can use the contactless to even do, the tube ride, but the Oyster thing really helped with getting people used to that concept, because they were kind of thinking, like, if you have a sort of a credit card and it has some sort of feature, but no one's using it, you're not going to look into it, right? So I think it's that kind of building the confidence and getting the right sort of use case that then you can build upon. So I think it would be the same with the EID and, EIDAS 2.0.
I suppose the good news is that banks are still a very trusted component in terms of being used for digital ID as opposed to other companies, because it isn't that banks are selling consumer data and it's not disappearing everywhere, without mentioning the big names, And your thoughts around?
Yeah, so to talk about that, we see that there is a huge demand from the community in Europe, in the US, other countries, to have their national IDs digitalized, and in response to that, many authorities actually implement those digital IDs, and they have a special app where a user can actually get. What we're doing is that as part of the Google Wallet functionality, we're more than welcoming authorities to integrate with us and to make sure that any user can add their driving license, can add their national IDs, and we're working with a couple of US states to kick off right now, and we have some conversations with European countries as well. And what we see is that many of them are favoring that partnership, and one of the reasons is that because what can we provide is the scale. So as Google Wallet is quite well represented across the community, has a really great adoption, then it is a way where all the users across all countries can securely store those national IDs or driving license. So yeah, we're working on that, and I believe that in a couple of years we'll have a much better frictionless experience.
So thank you very much for the panel. So I think kind of in summary, security, partnership, convenience, thinking about the users and making sure that it then becomes ubiquitous and easy for everyone. So thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that. And we're off for the break.